everyone, and welcome to our National Town Hall meeting. And for those of you who are rejoining us from last week due to those technical difficulties, we welcome you too again, and thank you for being diehard and staying with us in this endeavor. This is the last of our convenings of several roundtables that we've had over the last 5 months. We've worked closely with several of our partners, including Outdoor Afro. We've worked with Patagonia, we've worked with Black AF in STEM, as well as the Links Incorporated, to bring to you our thoughts, our struggles, our successes related to the Black community in the outdoors and how we need to do more to make them feel safe in that environment. And we've gotten quite a few great suggestions on things that we can do to make it better. And so tonight you're going to hear more because while we hear about the struggles, we hear about all of the things that we're not doing, what we realize is that we need to focus on actions. In fact, we know that nothing changes unless something moves. And tonight, we're going to hear from a panel of experts that will give us some stories. They will give us some ideas on ways in which we can make things better. We want to hear from them as they talk about the fact that we all realize while there are great people in this world, there are great white people in this world too. However, we do know that more individual whites will have to help us step up and make a difference to create safe outdoors by including more representation, by making sure we have more early childhood experiences, and making sure that we have the funding and the leadership that's needed. We need more people to open their mouths, open their minds, and open their pockets to support this wonderful endeavor that we're trying to achieve. So again, I'd like to welcome you and thank you all for coming. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali. And Mustafa has been with us throughout this entire series of roundtables and here tonight with us for our town hall meeting. He is a leader at the National Wildlife Federation as a vice president, but he's also a leader in the environmental justice world. He's one of those individuals that we can always count on to know that he's going to speak truth to power and that he's going to help us find solutions too. So welcome, Mustafa. We're happy to have you here with us again this evening.
Well, maybe it's good to be with you again. And I see you got that blue popping. So I know everybody's going to enjoy being able to see your wonderful smile and also the incredible work that has gone on over the last few months. This is a transformational moment.
Yes, it is. It is. And Mustafa, we're happy. Speaking of transformation, we know that you have some great ideas of what we can do with this material and how we can use it to make a difference. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's remind folks to read our summary of findings. You can find it by going over to nwf.org/safe spaces. That'll allow you to catch up on all of the previous roundtable series that we've had going on. And then as the recommendations that surface from the town hall, they'll be collected and they will also be incorporated into our summary of findings, which we will then produce a final report. And maybe inside of that, we'll have many of the solutions and recommendations that will help us to be able to move forward. And they will also be able to be presented to decision makers as we go forward and to the congressional hearing that we're hoping to have there on Capitol Hill to be able to amplify and really put a spotlight on the recommendations that have been collected over the past 5 months. And then we want to make sure that everyone in the audience is up to speed on the roundtable discussions we have. So we have a video that we pulled together that will walk everyone through it. So maybe with your permission, I would like for us to go ahead and roll the video.
Sure, let's see what we have done already.
wasn't until I was 18 years old and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life and met a Black zookeeper at my local zoo at the Philadelphia Zoo, who was a carnivore keeper, a wildlife conservationist. The moment I saw her, it was like the blinds were taken off of my mind. And in that moment, I realized just how much power lied in the fact that I had never seen a Black person doing this job, much less a Black woman doing this job.
One thing that I like to mention is that I think people can acknowledge that when they see one Black person in a room, they know that there is an issue there. But they don't always know what that issue is because there's not overt racism happening in front of their eyes. And one thing that I like to bring up is that even in those spaces, there's a lot of othering that happens.
It's just an incident that happened where we stayed in this cabin that wasn't locked. And me and my student, the only two Black people that were in the group, were the ones that felt the most unsafe. But because they're so used to camping outdoors, you know, they don't have that privilege of, you know, they have that privilege of not thinking about their own safety. Every time we brought it up, it was dismissed. Oh, they're just not used to being outdoors. No, it's not that. There are actually valid reasons why we don't feel safe in these places. I mean, women talk about it all the time, right? But not only are we women, but we're also Black. So there's a racism piece to it, but also there's a lot of sexism that comes in my field, right? The conservation field.
The day that I can just walk out and go onto, you know, some random piece of land and not have to worry about something bad happening to me, that's when I'll feel truly safe, when I can just go out and not have to like worry about being Black. I could just experience the outdoors for what it is. And when I'm like looking for lizards or whatever, that is when I will truly feel safe, when I don't have to worry about my Blackness in the outdoors.
We are in the front lines of all of the passion and the joy of many of these Black kids loving nature being wrung out of them as they go through the pipeline. And we have to stop that, meaning fixing the leaky pipeline that talks about deconstruction, reconciliation, community mobilization, completely changing the way in which we do the academy, completely changing the way in which we evaluate what talent is. Because there's a whole bunch of talent out there. But unfortunately, many of the structures that are put in place are white supremacy, and they're systemically unjust.
What do we do to make sure that all people have the resources and the pleasures of having a beautiful park in their neighborhood? Because if you can't teach kids
Right.
to love the park in their neighborhood, how are we going to teach them to love a national park?
The first tour guides were Black at Mammoth Cove, in Kentucky. So African-American history is very much present in these outdoor spaces within these public lands. How do we make that visible, right? How do we tell their stories, highlight them to really give folks, African-American particularly, a reason that's more than just camping or hiking, to visit those places, understanding what their history is and what their ancestors have done to help shape these American landscapes as well.
There has been a historical connection, that even predates slavery between people of African diaspora and land and the outdoors, but we don't tell those stories enough. We don't investigate, from what I've seen, we don't really investigate how have these people, traditionally enjoyed the outdoors in these natural spaces, and maybe how do we position our parks and our wildlands in order to, speak to that.
Mustafa, wasn't that a wonderful video? I mean, inspiring, right?
It was fantastic.
Yes, and we've heard from these individuals, and tonight we get a chance to hear even more from our own representative, Barbara Lee, We also have my representative from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Don McKeechan. We are also honored to have Dudley Edmondson and his wonderful photography. He'll talk about his experiences in the outdoors. In addition to that, we have, and please stay with us till the end because you'll get a chance to see a very interactive and motivational speech and call to action from Christian Cooper, the Central Park birder, writer, and editor. Mustafa, back to you.
Well, thank you, Mamie. And let's just remind folks one last time. We hope that you really enjoyed that video, and we hope that it gave you a better perspective about the challenges and opportunities ahead of us. And as Mamie shared, we have some incredible folks who are going to take us through that journey. And we also want to remind you that if you haven't already checked out our summary of findings, once again, go to nwf.org/safe spaces. And in addition to the summary, please share your thoughts, your resources, and recommendations by filling out the survey that our staff has provided on the YouTube live chat. And now, I'd like to introduce our fearless leader at the National Wildlife Federation, our president and CEO, Colin O'Mara. I'm passing the mic.
I'm really excited to be with all of you today, and it really is an honor. This is the National Town Hall that we're so excited about, and I am so just grateful for being invited into the space and for this opportunity to sit in and learn during each of these roundtable discussions. We have a phenomenal group of panelists today, and I think that they're going to be diving deeper into several policies, the programs, best practices necessary to advance equitable access and safety. The sessions that you're going to see today, if this is your first, I encourage you to look at the other ones, but if this would not have happened if it wasn't for some visionary leadership from Dr. Mamie Parker, who you'll hear from again in just a second, from John Robbins from our board chair, Bill Houston, as well as the amazing dream team of our environmental justice team under the leadership of Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, Julia Genti, Rebecca Villegas, Simone Lightfoot, and a whole range of folks, Keith Ward, so many others. Throughout this roundtable series, I learned a lot about the issues that many Black people face outdoors. And I just want to focus my minute today on issuing a challenge to my colleagues across the conservation community and the environmental field to commit to 4 actions. First, we got to hire more Black staff, especially in leadership positions, because leadership is absolutely vital. And people need to see themselves in the work that we do in order to create those deeper connections. And with a representative staff, we can be more innovative. We're going to be making sure we're not perpetuating historical disparities and harms throughout our programs and our policy advocacy. But really, we have to do better. Second, when Black colleagues tell you that they don't feel safe in a particular situation or a location, listen to them and take the necessary steps to address the issues. Whether it's the location of your next meeting or a room, and with folks that maybe don't have the necessary equity and justice competencies to create a safe space for healthy discussion and disagreements, being able to call out harms when they do occur, making sure that when issues arise, they are addressed in the moment, validating the experiences of others, and setting up processes to address situations when they arise. I mean, it's very important that we create safe spaces, not just in nature, but also in our organizations to have these conversations about where we're headed. Third, build authentic relationships and meet people where they are. Don't reinvent the wheel. You're going to hear from a range of amazing leaders today who do phenomenal work in their organizations, and we're proud to be partners with many of them. People connect with nature in a variety of different ways, and we need to be creative about how we bring programs together, how we bring services to communities, but it has to be through partnership. The white savior nonsense from the previous generation for folks parachute in, don't listen, don't engage authentically. It has to end. We got to engage authentically by really listening and helping co-create and helping meet needs on the ground. And most importantly, there's so many organizations, again, some are on this panel, in these panels today, these leaders and organizations that have made it their mission to cultivate safe spaces for Black families to connect with nature. And we just need to do a better job supporting them, making sure they have the resources, making sure they have the opportunity to get their message out. Amazing work has been made over the past year, but there's a ways to go. And lastly, I would encourage each of you to take the time to unlearn and relearn the truth about our nation's history and the role Black people have played shaping our natural world, leading our conservation community, leading on being on the frontier of every part of science and biology and climate change today. Much of our history has been written by guys that look like me, but written by white men that have intentionally excluded the contributions of people of color, or have had an inherent bias that have shaped our history books and shaped the way in which we talk about our conservation movement. We need to reclaim and rewrite those narratives. And if we do those 4 things, in addition to the amazing prescriptions you're going to hear today from our remarkable panelists, we'll be moving further and kind of bending that arc towards justice so everyone can enjoy the great outdoors in a safe and enjoyable way. And so with that, I'm just so excited about this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And Dr. Mamie Parker, the extraordinary leader from our board, I will turn it over to you, Dr. Mamie.
Thank you so much. So our next, we will hear from one of our partners from the Links Incorporated, and I happen to be a member of that organization as well. Colin mentioned the value added in partners. Our speaker, Leslie Miller Frazier, is the National STEM Chair of the Links Incorporated. And again, a group of great Black women doing great Black things, things in Black communities. Leslie is a graduate of MIT, where she received 2 degrees in chemical engineering. She also has a Juris Doctorate from UCLA. She served as a member of the Senior Executive Service, or the SES, at US EPA, where she was an environmental appeals judge. She retired from that position, but prior to that, she had a chance to hear a lot of claims related to environmental justice, which is something that we're interested in and talked about here today. She was appointed by the former administrator of EPA, Lisa Jackson. They resolved a lot of cases in that position. Prior to that, Leslie came to the federal government from working with an aerospace company, where she received a US patent for some of the materials that she co-invented with someone. So welcome, Leslie, and thank you and the Links Incorporated for your work and support for NWF and our program.
Thank you, Dr. Mamie, for that warm introduction and for inviting me here today. And thank you for all that you are doing on behalf of NWF and on behalf of the Links Incorporated. On behalf of our national president, Dr. Kimberly Jeffries Leonard, I bring you greetings from the Links Incorporated. We are an international not-for-profit corporation established in 1946 with a membership of more than 16,000 Black women and 292 chapters throughout the United States, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and the United Kingdom. The Links is one of the nation's oldest and largest volunteer service organizations of extraordinary women who are committed to enriching, sustaining, and ensuring the culture and economic survival of African Americans and other persons of African ancestry. Our influential decision makers and opinion leaders volunteer over 1 million documented hours of community service annually in our 5 program areas, including our signature program, the Links STEM Ready program. And as Dr. Mamie said, I have the privilege of serving as the National STEM Chair for the Links, with responsibility for implementing this program. We crafted it out of our dedication to ensuring quality STEM education at all grade levels so that our youth may be exposed to and prepared to study STEM-related careers. The Links is proud of our national partnership with NWF, through which we are able to expand our STEM preparation efforts from traditional STEM fields to also incorporate what we have coined Wild STEM into our Links STEM Ready program. And so as part of our Wild STEM efforts with NWF, our Link chapters expose and prepare students for careers in fields such as botany, marine biology, zoology, and environmental science. We teach students about the important role we each play as stewards of the planet, the impact of climate change, the role of advocacy, seeking environmental justice in our communities, and simply having a love for the outdoors, including creating safe spaces. We are growing partnerships, gardens, awareness, and appreciation for the outdoors among both our youth and our members. Link chapters started this work across the country and abroad to use nature to improve students' appreciation for and their skills, appreciation for the outdoors, using the National Wildlife Federation's Garden for Wildlife program. We are engaging youth and encouraging our chapter members to learn more and to restore and enhance wildlife habitat in their communities. In addition to our certified Garden for Wildlife at the Link's national headquarters in Washington, D.C., which is the 250,000th garden certified by NWF, we're really proud of that. Our Link chapters and students with whom we work planted and certified gardens in Kansas City, Missouri, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Rochester, New York, and 2 gardens in the country of Jamaica. Our chapters are engaging youth to advocate for conservation, environmental justice, and climate change. For example, our Harbor City, Maryland chapter outside Baltimore is working with its partners to connect HBCU students to these actions. We also are very proud to note that our nation's Vice President, Kamala Harris, is a member of the Links, as are 6 members of the U.S. House of Representatives. And our national president and our Link chapters join with them, the National Wildlife Federation, many organizations on tonight's panel, and others in our efforts to address the impacts of climate change and advocate for environmental justice. We applaud NWF for leading this effort among many green groups, and the Links Incorporated is proud to join Outdoor Afro, Black AF in STEM, and Patagonia as partners in the roundtables and this national town hall. Our members can relate to many of the current challenges for the Black community to feel safe in the outdoors. Christian Cooper's experience in Central Park helped bring this issue to the forefront for many, but unfortunately, it is by no means the only incident people of color face when venturing outside, where we all have a right to visit and enjoy. We know the consequences of this separation from nature are many, including a generation of adults and young people who don't enjoy the tens of thousands of parks, hiking trails, camping sites around the country that cost billions of taxpayer dollars to maintain. We look forward to hearing additional concrete actions on how to move us forward. And in sum, I will say the Links Incorporated applauds the National Wildlife Federation and others for tackling this problem.
Next, I'm honored to introduce our next guest, the Honorable Barbara Lee. She is a United States representative. She represents California's 13th congressional district. This includes the Oakland area as well as northern part of Alameda County. I've had a chance to spend time outdoors in this area with my cousins, the Lynch brothers in that particular area, including my cousin Marshawn Lynch, a football player there. So we're grateful to have Ms. Barbara Lee giving us some words. She is the former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. She also is chair emeritus and former Congressional Progressive Caucus. She was the vice chair and founding member of the Congressional LGBTQ and the Equality Caucus. She's played a major role in the anti-war movement. I had the privilege of meeting Ms. Lee as she was supporting the National Wildlife Refuge Association, along with Lee Hardeman and Rebecca Rubin. So thank you, Representative Lee, for all of your support for environmental justice, all of your support for programs that will support the Black community.
Hi, this is a staff member in the office of Congresswoman Barbara Lee. This is an official statement from the Congresswoman who was unable to join you all due to a last-minute family emergency. I'd like to thank the National Wildlife Federation for your advocacy to make green spaces and nature more accessible for all. The COVID-19 pandemic has once again highlighted how important green spaces are for the well-being and health of our communities. But too often, low-income communities and communities of color lack safe access to these spaces. African Americans comprise only 1% of all visitors to our public lands, and Latinos comprise only between 3 and 6%. Both groups are underrepresented as visitors to public lands relative to their presence in the population at large. There is historical context to this discrimination. Prior to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Black communities were banned from or segregated at public recreation sites, including national and state parks. This problem is only exacerbated by a lack of diversity among park rangers and other employees at national parks. 83% of National Park Service employees are white, and 62% are male. The outdoor recreation industry is no better. That's why your advocacy is so critical, and why I will continue fighting to address this in Congress through legislation like the Environmental Justice for All Act and the Thrive Act, which will both invest in expanding safe and accessible green spaces. I thank the National Wildlife Federation again for launching this critical initiative to discuss how we address racial disparities in access to the outdoors, from local green spaces to national parks. I hope you have a productive and informative discussion in today's panel. Keep up the fight.
We're so excited now to have the privilege of introducing this great panel. And I've had the privilege to meet each one of you all, and I get emotional when I think about who you are and what you do and your passion for what you do. And so it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our panel. We have Rue Mapp, and she is at Outdoor Afro, a founder of Outdoor Afro, and represents the organization very well. Thank you so much, Rue, for joining us. We have Chad Brown. Chad is founder and president of Soul River and Love is King. Welcome, Chad. We also have Earl B. Hunter Jr., and Earl is founder and president of Black Folks Camp 2. And then finally, we have representing an NGO in Chicago is Michael Howard, and Michael is founder and CEO of Fuller Park Community Development. And so what we'd like for each one of you all to do is to take about 3 minutes to greet us, say hello, tell us a little bit about why you're here and what keeps you here in what you do. And then from there, after each of you give your 3 minutes, then we will have a group discussion. So we'll start with you, Rue, because Outdoor Afro, you joined our partnership early on, and we really, really appreciate the work that you've done and the support you've sent us with Taisha Adams as well. So thank you, Rue, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, Dr. Parker, I have just been a fan of yours for so many years. I stand on the shoulders of all of your incredible work over many years. And so one of the things that Outdoor Afro is about telling a new narrative, but it's not in any way pretending to have created the narrative, that we have always been in the outdoors as Black people. And Outdoor Afro is here to continue to lift up representation of Black people as strong, beautiful, and free anytime and anywhere. Outdoor Afro was founded just as a blog on my heart back in 2009. And it was just one of those moments where I felt the need to tell a different story that we weren't seeing in popular representation. And it was the story of people like my parents, my mom and dad, who came from the South, who loved the outdoors, who loved nature of all kinds, and probably never considered themselves conservationists or environmentalists, but they every bit were. When I think about my mom taking the clothes that we weren't wearing anymore or outgrown and turning them into quilts, how my dad would say, no, we're gonna hold on to that jar, that's a good jar, and he would use that to preserve his food. Those were solid conservation ethics, behaviors, among many other things that my parents did. And so Outdoor Afro was using early social media to tell this new narrative. And I'm just so thankful to be on this panel with people who were right there, shoulder to shoulder with me, folks like Dudley Edmondson. And also, you know, the National Wildlife Federation has also played an important part in the development of Outdoor Afro to help me better link what I was doing to the more mainstream conservation conversations. And I always say that change doesn't happen faster than the speed of relationships. And so there have been many, many years, many conversations and activities that have led to this moment we're sharing today. And I'm so thankful for the authenticity that that relationship has that informs this conversation. So today, Outdoor Afro is in 56 cities. We have a leadership team that we have trained of over 100 men and women from all kinds of professional backgrounds. And we have a participation network of over 40,000 people. So it's more than a blog, it's an employer. It is getting people to get outside and find their nature swagger again. And I'm just so honored to be able to do work that allows me to be 100% of who I am as a Black woman in America and a leader. So again, thank you to everyone for having us and for the wonderful relationships that we can enjoy in the future.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for those words and the inspiration that your organization brings to us. Next, we have Chad Brown, founder and president of Soul River and Love is King. Chad, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here, Dr. Parker. It's always an awesome opportunity, especially being on a wealth of healthy panel on this, it's a good family here. What keeps me here is the most important, other than Soul River Inc. and this the work that I do with my nonprofit, but really it's this new birth and this new birth of my nonprofit Love is King, which is really centered around the safety, establishing the safety in the outdoors for BIPOC, basically. Love is King in a world of nature's grandeur and tranquility and healing power and the accessibility to all diverse individuals and underrepresented communities. We see the freedom to roam as our tagline of Love is King in a natural world of safety, basically, as basic undeniable human right. And we committed to safeguarding that right for all Black, Indigenous, people of color, and our lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender citizens. Our movement leads with safety first, safety before traveling, safety once in the field. And when the focus on safety is first, we begin to remove the barriers of fear, intimidation, injustice, discrimination, and we dismantle the systemic racism. A safe experience in nature elevates the serenity, healing, and improves the physical and mental and spiritual health of the most marginalized and vulnerable amongst us. Love is King is very important to me, and is something that I'm trying to establish as a movement across the United States on a national platform. And that is why I'm still in this space right now, is what's keeping me in the space. And I'm very thankful to be here on this panel to share.
Thank you so much, Chad. We appreciate the work that you've done, and what a name, Love is King. And I know that has a lot to do with MLK as well. Hopefully we can talk more about that.
Yes,
And right, and it's a song to my ear to hear you say yes, ma'am, too. I appreciate that. I really do. Okay,
it's Southern in me.
the next panelist is Earl B. Hunter Jr. And Earl is, as we said earlier, founder and president of the Black Folks Camp 2. Earl, welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Listen, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I want to tell you guys, I was born by the river in a little tent. Whoa, just like the river I've been running, yeah, ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Yeah. Listen, I am so excited to be on this panel because a change is coming, a change has come. Black folks have camped, Black folks will camp. Black folks will camp more, and we will camp not just with Black folks, we're gonna camp with any and everyone. One of the panelists on the here, Rue Mapp, I'm a big fan of Rue. I've seen the work that she's done in the place, in this space, and what she's done, and I'm very proud of her. With that being said, I come from a pretty different background. I tell folks I'm a good times kid living a Huxtable lifestyle. I entered the outdoor industry as an executive. Before entering into the outdoor industry, I was an executive in sourcing and driving the business in Asia and all different countries. However, I got into the outdoor space as a business, as an executive. And when I got into the industry and saw that the industry is $840 billion and the RV industry was $144 billion, and I was one of the only Black executives in the sales and marketing side of that, I thought, how do we get more Black folks in this particular space, not only to take advantage of the industry, but also the lifestyle? Listen, we can get it done because I got it done. I had never been camping a day in my life until 6.5 years ago. And in between 6.5 years ago, I took a company from 815,000 to 17.5 million in 4 years. So I know that we can do some great things in the outdoor industry. Our company is about not only just taking Black folks out and enjoy the outdoors. Our company is enlightening Black folks from the toenail of the elephant to understand that we can be in this industry, we can get in this lifestyle, we can be better educated in regards to this lifestyle. And there are tons and tons and tons of dollars out there that the industry is missing, but we're also missing as well because we're not necessarily in the lifestyle or the industry. I believe in showing children how amazing the outdoor industry is, but I also believe in showing folks my age how amazing the outdoor industry and lifestyle is as well, because those young folks need to have a role model, and I hope their role model are their parents and the people that look like them and their families. And so with that being said, I'm extremely excited to be here. I'm extremely happy. And Mamie, like you said, I'm gonna call you Auntie Mamie now.
I'll take that. And that's going to really work well when I have to reclaim my time when some of my panelists may go a little faster. Now, I'll tell you this, Christian Cooper just wrote in the chat box that Earl just upped the ante because others maybe have to sing too. And he says he's not singing. So,
no, listen, we're in this together. Hey, I think singing is amazing, particularly around the campfire. So I'm excited about that.
Exactly. And singing is a part of the Black culture too.
Absolutely,
So,
it is.
Yeah, so thank you for that. We really, really appreciate your inspiration as well. And then our final guest is from Chicago, Michael Howard. He's the founder and CEO of Fuller Park Community Development Area. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. I appreciate it. I am so happy to be here today. And I really thank you for allowing me to be part of NWF's National Town Hall meeting, because basically this type of gathering really solidifies the voice that we need to put together so that we're heard by all who don't even understand some of the things that they need to understand in regards to protecting and being stewards of our great outdoors, because without it, we could not survive. And so I just want to let you know that one of the programs that I really am representing today is called Eden Place Nature Center. It's a 20-year-old recaptured, it's a 35-year-old illegal captured dump site that we have been operating for over 20 years, serving over 10,000 youth and families every day of the year, COVID notwithstanding. And what we have been doing to enhance our space in our neighborhood is basically making green spaces in every vacant lot that we can find. And in 2000, we had over 3,000 vacant lots in our neighborhood, and we have recaptured approximately 300 of those into open green spaces with butterfly gardens, monarch habitat, and food gardens for families. We also have a 3.5 acre urban farm that we've established some 10 years ago to help feed the folks in our neighborhood. And Eden Place is most famous for its unique programs that we have been bringing to the south side of Chicago, because our mission is to make more and more people stewards of the great outdoors. We've had a great working relationship with a lot of partners like USDA Forest Service International Division, where we have done Monarch Live programs and webcasts with the Michoacan Butterfly Conservation Center in Mexico, where we introduced our youth to the youth in that area over a webcam back in 2009. And ever since then, we have been growing and farming monarch butterflies and releasing them to help them repopulate the population. And so it's just a great thing, Dr. Parker, that we have been allowed this opportunity to share with you and all of the great distinguished guests here today. A lot of them I've known, I've worked with, spent a lot of time with Rue in Washington, D.C. back in the Obama administration, putting together the American Great Outdoors Initiative. And we actually served as a site where the cabinet visited during that fact-finding mission, the year that the entire cabinet went around the country. They came by Eden Place Nature Center, and we were honored when the First Lady, Michelle Obama, actually gave us a shout out with a full page on her own personal website in regards to the best practices being practiced here in Chicago. And one of the great things that I really am happy about today is that because we have been in existence over 25 years, that the youth that we took camping, took canoeing in the boundary waters, all the way up in Canada, on the border of Canada, those youth today now are bringing their children back to the same open and green space that they helped clean up when it was a dump site. So that just lifts my heart to basically see that we have affected more than one generation, and we're still affecting the younger generations, building more and more stewards that we can bring them on board to not only take them camping and canoeing, but also help introduce them to all of the great opportunities in terms of jobs that are becoming available. Because in the next 15 to 20 years, most of the people that are working in this conservation movement are my age, and we're all going to be retiring. So I challenge everyone out there, you should be mentoring somebody right now to take your place, because basically you want to make sure that all the great work you've been doing over the years is carried on and extended much farther than you have been able to make it go. So Dr. Parker, I just want to say thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Michael. And we know too that you are a musician too. And had we known that, we would have asked you to come and play your guitar. And you have some Arkansas roots. So you are very special to this group and the work that you've done. So we appreciate having you here. So now, panelists, it's time for us to talk to each other and talk to the audience. We do have some questions that we would like for you to consider. And each of you won't get a chance to answer the question, but we want to start, especially with you, Rue. Would you help us out with the first question? The panelists in our previous roundtables, they've said that large NGOs and these green groups, as well as foundations, they really need to put more trust and confidence and respect and resources in the hands of these Black-led outdoor organizations like yours and others, and also to bring your unique skills to the table. So what needs to be done to make that happen? So the how part is what we'll be capturing today to put in our final report. How can that be done?
Well, as I said before, nothing happens faster than the speed of relationships. And the way that you get in good relationship with anybody, it could be your neighbor, it could be your children, it could be people in your community, your sorority, your whole town. You have to get to know people. You have to listen to people, and then you have to respond in a way that signals that you actually heard what that person has shared with you about what they value. And the thing that's really interesting for me is that Outdoor Afro was not born out of any industry. It was not born to be in service of any industry. It was born to be in service of Black people. And it's been unapologetic in its focus all this time. And so I have learned so much about the more traditional not-for-profits in this space only after I started Outdoor Afro, organizations that I had no clue about, but were so important to help me understand what was missing. And so in the early years of Outdoor Afro, I cut my teeth on traditional conservation ethic at the Golden Gate Audubon Society here in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I learned to just love birds and wildlife and their habitats. And I'm continuing to grow as well. But I think that the thing that's been so helpful over all these years is that I've been in relationship. And I think that we have to give ourselves the gift of time to develop those relationships with each other. And not everything is for everybody. Okay. You're not going to be able to make everybody in every group happy all the time. And that's why specificity has been so important in my work, because if we're talking about everybody, sometimes it feels like we're talking about nobody. So we have to get really clear about what our focus is, who we want to build with, and go deep in those relationships.
Great. Okay. Anyone else want to take a, Earl, I see you have your mic off. Would you like to?
Yeah, you know what? I agree with Ruth. I think one of the things that I've learned, not only just in business, but in my previous business, but also in this particular business, is that relationships are key. I've never been a salesperson. I've always been a relationship builder, and whether that be a relationship building in the outdoor industry or also relationship building in the community. Listen, I believe that in regards to this work that we as Black folks, there many of us have no clue what the outdoors is. We have no clue what the outdoors even look like in regards to the South. I'm in the South, right? And being in the South, we have data and surveys and all this good knowledge of how it's important for us to build relationships in the community, get that community to really take on the fact that they can really enjoy the outdoor lifestyle. And once we get more folks, I believe, enjoying and loving the outdoors, there'll be more folks that want to take care of it and conserve it, more so like Ruth had her experiences in regards to conserving and preserving this great land that we all share.
Great. Okay, I want to see, Chad, you want to speak? And then I'll ask you, Michael, and each one of you will have a chance to answer this first question. Chad, any comments?
Yeah, yeah, just on behalf of what Earl and Ruth speaking, I'll just echo that, relationships is king. I think, when you step into a BIPOC space, especially smaller nonprofits, I think, especially to more allies, is understanding that you're actually about to step in a unconventional space. And within that unconventional space, that space is filled with creativity, uniqueness, different ideas, and those are the things that the listeners need to really listen and pay attention to, because that's how we are solving our process and solving the problem for us to get to that access into the outdoors, et cetera, in our own way. And we have a very unique way of that approach. And that's a really special approach, and people need to really listen to that. When they can listen to that and understand what we're doing, we are now able to create more of a conversation and a bridge to where we can be able to connect, basically, but I think it's not about changing the narrative of what we are doing. It's about embracing what we're doing, basically, and bringing that into a newer space where we can also be able to elevate what we're doing into the larger space. And that's with the partnerships and the business relationships, et cetera. It's just appreciating where we are and appreciating where you want to connect us with and elevate us with, basically. But yeah.
Great. So Michael, I'm going to ask you this question because we've talked about funding and how it's very, very difficult to get funds for Black-led organizations, even though we are doing, as Chad and Drew and Earl have said, develop relationships. There's unique approach that the Black community will have when we go about the same end results, but we may go about them differently. So you have a great example in Chicago about how money is given and it's not always shared equally. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Well, I'm not as eloquent as many of my partner panelists here. I'm just a old sharecropper from Arkansas, picked cotton as an introduction to the great outdoors. I worked in my great-grandmother's victory garden and learned how to use a hoe. And so basically, I've seen over the years in my lifetime a lot of great and intelligent people and intellect be stolen, and then somebody else takes the credit for the work that they've done. And so it has been my experience, even here in Chicago, where our programs have been copied tit for tat, point by point, and renamed and tried to sell it back to me, something that I basically invented. And it's a systemic problem that exists, that folks with the capital basically have never really supported, especially an African-American male-ran organization. African-American women have gotten a little bit more leeway because they seemingly are less threatening to the folks with the capital. But basically, I really believe that we have got to come at this thing out in a whole nother direction. We have enough dollars in our own neighborhood that we could fund any project that we get behind. And so we love to get paid and run to somebody else's neighborhood and spend the money. People listen to you when the money stops coming. And when we start working collectively to basically build our own infrastructure and build our own relationships with one another, then we can be respected, I think, by others. I think it'll be a natural transformation for anybody out there with money to start saying, you know, we've got to start listening to these Black folks because they really know what they're doing. And if we want to get involved and have partnerships with them, you know, we have got to sit down at the table and listen intently, because basically it's the same story. I'm sorry, as old as I am, I keep seeing the same thing repeat itself. We use a lot of superlative words and we speak a lot of good talk when we're in mixed company, but when we're together, we tell the truth. You know, folks don't want to give us money, you know, and unless we say yes and no, yes to everything they want us to say yes to, we're basically not cooperative, and they move on and find somebody else who's willing to do whatever they want to do to basically fund the grant that they've got. Because we have been used as a not-for-profit many, many times by organizations, and they come in, they get $1 million, and then they give us $3,000, and we're supposed to be happy.
You know, Mamie, just to really piggyback on what Mr. Michael was saying here, you know, our company is not a non-for-profit. We are a for-profit company, and one of the reasons why we are is because our job is to help fund companies like yours, Michael. We're going to build, our company is going to be built to be able to be in that space to help out our own. We feel like that my legacy is to get more Black folks in the outdoors. This is my legacy, right? Mm-hmm. This is what I do every single day. I put my money where my mouth was, and I'm going to drive this thing to help folks like yourself, Michael, and other groups in this particular call to drive this. We're in a particular space now. We're going to be able to do some of that, but in the next 3 to 5 years, we're building a business that we're going to be able to share the revenue with folks that are out there doing those particular jobs and really getting more Black folks in the outdoors. And I'm proud of that in a way that unbelievable.
Yes, you should be. Yes.
Yes. Does anybody else want to speak?
Yeah. I really love this pivot to talk about business, because one thing, whether you are for-profit or not-for-profit, we have to run good businesses. And I would want to encourage anyone, and I'm always happy to share how and, you know, get under the hood of Outdoor Afro, because the thing that, you know, I mean, it's interesting because people don't necessarily think of what we do as a business. Even to this day, I still get people who will come to me and ask me, what do you really do for a living? Right. Like they can't believe that I actually have a job in this space, right? But I not only have a job that I've given myself over to that pays me a living wage with benefits, there's also the joy I have to be able to do that for others. And I think that we have to disassociate ourselves from the deficit mindset sometimes and really go for what we are entitled to, but also strive to be best in class in our business, to drive our efforts, our social efforts with solid business acumen. And so that's what's helped Outdoor Afro grow. It's not a popularity contest. This is really about changing the narrative of not only who's getting outside, but also who's leading outside. Because I want people to see me, young women, young men who look like me, to see that, oh, there's a job, there's a professional pathway there, and that it's not a vow of poverty or a vow of struggle to be a part of this work. And so I just, my hat's off to the gentlemen on this panel with me who are doing exactly that, who are changing the narrative of what it means to not only lead, but also to do business and to hold ourselves as Black businesses to a high standard that will help improve the credibility and access for others. Because I know that how I behave out here in these streets will have an effect on how other organizations will be perceived and seen as credible. So you can count on me to do good business that will help justify the continued support for all of our work.
Right on. Right on.
Right. And that's really good. So Rue and others, you all talked about building relationship, listening. And then Chad, you mentioned this unique approach. I'm kind of curious about that. But so if you can integrate some of that in this next question, I think that would be great. The next question, the roundtables also concluded that we needed actions. Again, this is all about actions, which is what you guys are giving us. And we like to continue that at all levels, whether it's national, regional, state, or county, or local. What are the thoughts about one or more of these levels, some concrete steps that can be taken to help us get to these types of actions and understanding our unique approach that we bring, the value added we bring to the outdoors?
That to me, man.
Yes, anything you'd like to say, a concrete action,
Sure,
what is it that
sure.
you need or you feel would be appropriate?
Sure. Concrete actions, from a Love is King perspective, it is an actionable platform. And that's where we're at. We're all about action, action platform. Um, you know, as we all have the love of Dr. Martin Luther King, and when I think about the writings that he has done, the speeches, et cetera, I believe that with the mission and what we're doing with Love is King, it's like picking up where he left off, basically. And what I mean by that is that, Dr. Martin Luther King was a disciplined man, and when there was any kind of confrontation or aggression, et cetera, you never saw him got pulled out of his position, and he always remained himself as a professional gentleman in the public. But he knew how to deal with this situation, what's coming at him. I like to look at Love is King as this way of actionable platform of establishing a unique way of dismantling aggression in the outdoors without it taken away from BIPOC experiences in nature, period. And that way is basically establishing a training with outdoor leaders that are running many different organizations, and give them the skill sets and the support needed to help them be able to be armed of how to dismantle or de-escalate a situation that's coming at them without it taken away from BIPOC experiences. And there's a really unique, specific ways you can do that, but it's going to require a particular, type of training to do that. Establishing the safety mechanism of campsites, establishing the safety mechanisms of primitive camping in the backcountry, where BIPOCs have the opportunity to where they can explore, because we want everybody to explore further and bolder in awesome wild country places and find your healing. Everybody has that human right to explore in nature, and so fundamentally it's establishing these kind of safety type of mechanisms that help support BIPOC groups, that help support leaders, and when we can put that in place, it helps BIPOC and everyone be able to find that healing or that path in nature that makes them feel comfortable, because everybody has a right to feel comfortable in nature. And so that's, where I would come at it from an actual platform. We're about trying to solve this problem. We are in a very delicate state of times. The aggression, the racism, et cetera, has been around us, for a very, very long time. But the veil, the cover has been lifted right now, and now a lot of people seeing that, but we've been in this space. We've been fighting, we've been dealing with this, et cetera, but now it's about arming and supporting our leaders within communities and giving them the support needed to help deal with aggression on a smaller level, even down to the local level, to where police can't get to, et cetera. And training our leaders to be able to be observant, to be able to, to identify, the issues, et cetera, take that information, be able to relate that to the police officers, et cetera. There's different ways we can do that, but yeah, I don't want to go all into it. It's the panel and everything, but yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question, and you just to get some thoughts on this one too. What training and exposure do you believe that we could give to white people in this space? Colin talked earlier about it. He gave us 4 things that he thought were very important So let's talk about what white people and NGOs and agencies, businesses can do to welcome and help us feel welcome in outdoor spaces. And I will open that up to anyone who'd like to take.
I'll take that question first, Mamie. You know, I believe in a unified outdoors. Listen, there's over 360 million people in America. All right, Black folks, we make up about 14% here in the United States, right? Yet, yes, less than 10% of us are experiencing the outdoors, and less in the South. And when I say experiencing the outdoors, I mean with regards to trailing, camping, and enjoying the outdoors for R&R recreation. Listen, white folks ask me all the time, when I'm out on the trail, they ask me all the time, Earl, what can I do? First of all, I figured out that most white folks in the South don't even know why Black folks haven't camped or why we haven't enjoyed the outdoors why we enjoyed the outdoors. As a matter of fact, we have a lot of data and to share that based on the thousands of white folks in the outdoors that we've actually surveyed. With that being said, I always tell folks, you can go to all the DEI meetings all you want. You can go to these amazing conferences. You can have all these conversations. The bottom line is white folks gonna have to get them some Black friends, and they're gonna have to encourage and invite more Black folks to go into the outdoors, because many of us are not going into those outdoors on our own. And there's not enough folks like myself, Rue, Michael, Chad out there to really drive this. I know Rue, her organization, 40,000 strong, that is absolutely amazing. However, when you have the majority of the folks who are enjoying the outdoor lifestyle and enjoying this beautiful nature, this 640 million acres of public land that we all pay for, and the majority of those folks are white, you're gonna have to do the very hard thing that it is to do, is find some Black friends and remove that fear, add some knowledge, and invite those particular individuals to the outdoors. And if you don't want to do that, and if you say you want the outdoors to be more inclusive and you don't want to do that part, you're just talking and you're just having conversation with yourself, because I believe that is the key point to driving this.
Anything you'd like to add? I see you, Ruth, shaking your head.
Come on. I mean, you know, I'm a Star Wars fan, and there was a saying that I always go back to that Yoda said, and that is, do or not do, there is no try. And I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time. Like we're almost having a 2010 conversation right now. Okay. Yeah. Because there has been, it's important I say this, because to not acknowledge the strides that have been made, the growth that has been achieved, and the representation that has been shifted is, for me, not building on the assets that we already bring in this conversation. So we're not just, so I'm level setting that we're not starting from zero. This is not a new conversation, and that people have been making incredible, incredible strides. Right. And what's important to me in my work is that we really build on what's already, like I talk about Harriet Tubman as a wilderness leader. I talk about my dad's connection to the outdoors for a reason, because the outdoors for Black people looks like a whole lot of different things. Because I know that for busy working families, the idea of dangling off a side of a cliff 4 hours away from your house where you don't know nobody, how is that relaxing? Right. Why is more adrenaline considered a vacation or some kind of, you know, way that you want to relax? For people I know in my community, they want to bust out the grill on the weekend. Yeah. They want to see, they want to be around their friends and their families. So I really want to give voice and validation for the ways that Black people who are busy, working professionals often, want to relax, want to recreate, and for us to begin seeing Black people in nature as doing so much more than the more mainstream ways that the outdoors has been sold to us. Right. We're already there.
Okay, so you know, I heard the amen corner over there from Earl B. Hunter Jr. when you were speaking. And so our final question has to do with the fact that what can faith-based organizations do to make meaningful impact to this? effort that we're talking about, creating safe outdoor places. I was going to call on Michael, but I don't know. Michael, are you able to answer that one, or should we give Earl the chance? Michael, are you there? Okay, either Earl or Chad or Rue, either of the three of you.
Well, I'll go first. I'm a PK. I'm a preacher kid. My mom was a minister and a missionary and did all those things. That's why, in regards to singing, I grew up singing. Matter of fact, I went to church 8 days a week. Right. And so, with that being said, however, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I went to all Black churches when I was a kid. Right. And so, when I think about it now, that my colleagues now, or folks that I know who go to churches that are not all Black, and they talk about the summer vacations and amazing things they do, and they go on these camps and things of that nature. We didn't do that, right? We weren't doing that in my church, right? And as a matter of fact, we wouldn't allow anybody else to take us to come to our church and to share the goodness of the outdoors to us. Now, we may have gone fishing maybe once or twice, but in regards to staying in the outdoors overnight, we weren't doing that. That was a no-no. As a matter of fact, the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, none of those particular individuals came to my neighborhood, right? I lived in the hood. I'm from the bricks, right? In regards to Columbia, South Carolina. I'm from the neighborhood where folks would see on the news and say, don't go over there, right? I'm from that area. So those groups, the scouts and all those folks didn't come to my neighborhood. So I didn't share that particular knowledge with me. Maybe some other people on the panel, but not necessarily with me. And that being said, in order to get more faith-based organizations involved into the outdoor lifestyle, outdoor industry, understand what we're doing to help us drive this, those individuals have to know how important the nature and the outdoors is first, right? Because they're not going to want to get involved in something they don't know, particularly the leaders, right? Leaders, preachers, particularly have to be able to go out in the outdoors and experience it for themselves and the goodness of that nature bath for them to be able to say, hey, we think we want to pay and give money to an organization like Outdoor Afro or Michael's group or Love's King, all those groups, those individuals have to be sold in to the fact that this type of healing, this type of mental beauty not only can help the folks on the outside of the church, but it should be helping the folks inside of the church, and particularly in faith-based organizations. So again, this starts at leadership. Leadership has to understand how important that nature and the outdoors is before they'll even get themselves involved in this.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. I know too, Leslie was on earlier, Leslie Miller Frazier, and they just started a Nesby Junior chapter at her church, and they celebrated Earth Day with the young students there, the youth there, and it's a good way. They gave them plants that they planted for their garden, which I think is a good start to our container garden. So that is another example of where you can reach out to faith-based organizations. So panelists, yes, Rue, as we close.
I would be remiss to not lift up that to connect people to nature is, and all of creation, is to connect them with God.
Right on.
That as Black people, especially Black people who in this country have many underpinnings in our culture, in the church. Mm-hmm. You talk to almost anybody. We have I'm a public speaker because I was the one told to get up and read the scripture on Sunday. That prepared me for the moment that I'm in right now. And so the church and the culture of the church, even if you're not tied to it presently, has a huge, huge impact in the ways that Black people connect with each other. And so it's not a separate conversation. We've been singing about nature. We've been singing about laying down our burdens down by the riverside. Mm-hmm. So I just want to give voice to the ways that the church is already all about nature. Yeah. And taking care of our planet is taking care of creation. So. Yeah.
And we've done a great job in terms of the civil rights movement. Where did it usually start? It started in the church, and of course, the environmental movement followed the civil rights movement too. So, and use some of that as a model. So that's certainly something that we we should be reaching out to. And many of us are maybe not as comfortable doing it, but it's a very influential community in the Black community to do so. Believe it or not, panelists, the time is up. We have used our time and we have to move on to the next panel, but we really want to say thank you to each and every one of you all. We encourage you to stay in the game, keep your passion. We understand your strength and your struggles, and continue to inspire us. So thank you so much for joining us today. Rue Mapp from Outdoor Afro, Chad Brown from Soul is River, and from Love is King, as well as Michael Howard from Fuller Development, and as well as Earl B. Hunter Jr. from Black Folks Camp 2. We really appreciate all of you all in this session, and thank you so much for, hopefully you'll stay with us and continue what you're doing. So thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
People.
Thank you.
And thank you to that transformational panel. All the amazing and incredible information that you just dropped on us is going to be so needed as we move forward in making safe spaces a reality for our communities and others. And now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Representative Donald McEachin. You know, Congressman McEachin represents Virginia's 4th Congressional District, and he proudly represents his district in the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis, and the House Committee on Natural Resources. I had the honor of speaking at a plenary with Congressman McEachin on the climate crisis and its impact on Black and Brown communities in March. He is a champion and strong advocate for environmental justice, and he co-founded the United for Climate and Environmental Justice Task Force, which is a true testament to his commitment. In addition to serving as an incredible leader on the Hill and in his home state of Virginia, he always stays true to the need to engage communities when shaping policies. He's proven time and time again that when you center the voices of the most impacted and take the time to listen and amplify their issues and recommendations, policymakers can actually make real change happen. I am blessed and honored to give you my friend, Congressman Donald McEachin.
Good afternoon. I'm Donald McEachin, the proud representative of Virginia's 4th Congressional District. I'm grateful for the opportunity to join you today at this National Town Hall on Creating Safe Spaces, hosted by the National Wildlife Federation, Outdoor Afro, Black AF in STEM, Patagonia, Links Incorporated, and others. Like everyone here today, I have a deep and profound commitment to the stewardship of our planet and to the moral imperative of addressing our climate crisis and decades of environmental injustice with the fierce urgency that they demand. I believe that whether we are discussing policies to advance racial equality across the country, the impacts of a 21st century civil climate core, or President Biden's American Jobs Plan, environmental justice must be front and center. We have a wonderful opportunity before us right now to advance bold policies to build upon decades of advocacy and grassroots organizing of tenacious environmental justice communities all over this country. In Congress, I've been working diligently alongside environmental justice communities and community-based organizations to advance environmental justice legislation. For 2 years now, I've had the honor of working alongside Natural Resources Chair Raul Grijalva and communities across our country on the Environmental Justice for All Act, groundbreaking legislation crafted by the people for the people to give EJ communities a voice and the means to fight back against pollution that threatens their children and their families. Together, we listened and learned about the impacts of climate change on communities across the country and built a community-led, community-driven process to address the needs of EJ communities. Our Environmental Justice for All Act envisions a society where all people are safe from pollution, a society where all generations can live, work, play, and pray, and learn in places that are healthy. By engaging frontline and fenceline communities, we drafted a comprehensive bill that addresses the urgent matters facing people today. I am overjoyed and energized to have President Biden as an ally in this work. From day one, President Biden has shown his commitment to working alongside environmental justice communities, his commitment to listen and learn from their lived experiences in order to advance solutions that promote clean air, pure water, and a safe environment. Whether it is the formation of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, the ongoing development of a climate and environmental justice screening tool, or the government-wide Justice 40 initiative, it is clear to me that the president understands that from now on, our nation's environmental policy must be informed by an awareness of how our laws and federal programs have left communities out and left them behind. I'm proud to be their partner in this work and to be joining all of you here today to advance these important causes. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining this important discussion and for the opportunity to speak to you. And now, on to this afternoon's second panel discussion, which focuses on legislative and policy opportunities, both in Congress and from the Biden administration. Opportunities to seek to address safety and access challenges for African Americans in the outdoors. By listening to experts such as folks that you'll hear from in this next panel, we'll be able to amplify and elevate the solutions and recommendations directly from the people that are disproportionately affected. I look forward to working alongside our distinguished panelists and everyone in attendance in the weeks and months to come to advance more equitable and just policies. God bless you and have a wonderful discussion.
Well, with that being said, we're going to move to panel 2. So now we're going to talk a little bit about legislative and policy opportunities. And as we begin that journey, we have an amazing set of panelists who are just going to take us on a journey that is focused on positivity, a journey that is focused on actually making real change. And we're just going to ask folks to briefly introduce themselves and share some introductory information. So I am blessed that the first person on our panel is Beatra Wilson, the Assistant Director for Cooperative Forestry at the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service. Beatra, how are you?
I'm good. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Santiago Ali. Hello, everyone. I'm Beatra Wilson, Assistant Director of Cooperative Forestry at U.S. Forest Service. And in that role, I actually have the honor of leading the nation's portfolio of urban and community forestry programs. So slightly different from the traditional mission of our agencies, where we take care of the nation's 150 plus forests and grasslands. The opportunity I have is carved out for that niche of 130 million acres of urban forested land. And when we think about the conversation we've been having, and we think about the spaces I have an opportunity to work in, a lot of times my work is in the majority minority population. So it's slightly different from so much of the access to public lands. A lot of my work is done around availability of green spaces for the people in these communities to actually recreate and have an opportunity to heal and spend time together. And so I'm excited to be here. Thank you on behalf of U.S. Forest Service, my leadership, Dr. Parker, this invitation, incredible opportunity for me to be here, but just, the space, the platform I hold in urban forestry, the platform I hold is a leader, a young leader in an agency over 100 years old is unique. And so I'm truly, truly optimistic about this opportunity this evening. And I want to share that urban and community forestry is unique as we serve communities outside of the nation's public lands predominantly, but we are still a part of the federal government and this administration's opportunity to engage and connect with everyone.
And we need you. And we're going to look forward to that set of conversation. And now I am blessed to be able to introduce Preston D. Cole. Let me make sure I say that again. Preston D. Cole, Secretary for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Brother Cole, I know I've known your work for a while, so why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I am absolutely inspired by the conversations that's going on as we speak, and will continue to be inspired as we move this program on. And so again, my name is Preston Cole. I'm coming to you from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I represent approximately 3,000 employees in the state of Wisconsin that oversee their natural resource agency in the state of Wisconsin, as well as our environmental management. Half of our programs are forestry, fisheries, and wildlife. And of course, the other half of our programs relate to clean air and clean water. Born and raised in southwestern Michigan. If you know where Benton Harbor, Michigan is, I grew up in a small town right outside Benton Harbor, Michigan. And so my first conservationist was Betty and Oscar Cole. You know, I had an acre worth of, youngest of 9, had an acre worth of vegetable gardens to hoe as the youngest child. And so always told me, don't put anything on the land that you won't put in your mouth. So grew up from there, went on to become a future farmer of America. And so when we talk about that attribute, about being a future farmer of America, you begin to understand the relevancy of being outdoors and not being afraid of being outdoors, of course. And, you know, my parents took us to, you know, a lot of parks, a lot of natural areas, but growing up on Lake Michigan, you know how really small you are when you stand on the shores of one of the greatest lakes in the world. And I knew what I was going to do the rest of my life. So I am a trained forester from the University of Missouri in Columbia. Went on to work for the Missouri Department of Conservation as a resource forester. So I spent a lot of time doing urban and community work. Wonderful work that I've had to do there was engaging in communities in and around St. Louis. I was in Ferguson before Ferguson had the drama, trying to get the cities, towns, and villages to do urban and community forestry activities. And so went to Milwaukee, became the city forester there, took over public works, and now as secretary to the department, I'm here to tell you that, you know, with 44 state parks, you know, 500 miles of boat launches, you know, we talk about access. We talk about access to what we call a menu of wonderful ways to spend outdoors. You know, 84,000 miles of rivers and streams in the state of Wisconsin. On the eastern side of the state, of course, it's Lake Michigan, and on the western side of the state is the great Big Muddy, that are known as the Mississippi River. So folks have found their way into the outdoors over the last year or so. I mean, records in terms of our state park passes, records in terms of first-time fishing sales, up 104%. So people made their way into the outdoors. I'm not so sure if there's lots of Black people that made their way into the outdoors. So my responsibility is to learn from you folks today and hear some of the challenges and opportunities. When we talk about Outdoor Afro, we know that we have to engage Outdoor Afro as an organization, much like we have to engage brown people camping, Black Outdoors, the Black Freedom Outfitters, Outfitters, Latino Outdoors, and a myriad of other types of organizations that have popped up on the landscape to stake their claim is to continue this activity of being in the outdoors. So today for me is that I am willing to do and give as much as I can, but I want to be able to listen. I want to tell a couple of stories about why this is important for us as a community of people of color. And again, I'm excited to be here. And again, Mustafa, thank you for your leadership as well.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We're now going to move on, and I get a chance to introduce my sister, Chandra Taylor, senior attorney at the Southern Environmental Law Center.
So hello, everyone. Thank you, Mustafa. Thank you for the invitation, NWF. So I have been practicing law since 2001. I'm from Kinston, North Carolina, and most of my career has been in environmental law. I came to Southern Environmental Law Center in 2006, explicitly with the intention to make sure that the work that I was doing was positively impacting people of color, that I would be representing communities of color as we seek to protect our environment and as we seek to protect our health. So that has been the work that I've done over the time that I've been at SCLC. moving from transportation and land use litigation to really focusing in on water quality protection. Just this year, I've started with leading our Southern Environmental Law Center Environmental Justice Initiative. So we've been doing the work for quite some time, and we are intentionally making sure to do more of that work and look at all of the ways that we're protecting environment and public health through an environmental justice lens. So I look forward to contributing to this conversation and learning more from everyone participating today. Thank you again.
No, thank you for all the work that you continue to do. We're now going to move to the City of Angels with Mark Ridley Thomas, council member from the 10th District for the great city of Los Angeles.
Thank you very much, my brother. Ladies and gentlemen, delighted to be here. Pleased to be a part of the conversation to discuss how safe and equitable access to the outdoors is rather fundamental, it's crucial, especially to communities of color. And as a member of the Los Angeles City Council, and over the course of my career in public life, I've been committed to creating public spaces that are welcoming, that are safe, inspire our young people to do those things that they may not have thought possible. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Los Angeles. And I have a sense that our parks and our open spaces can and should represent the best of our communities. I think that we're made better by the experiences that we have in these parks, in an introduction to open space, trying to bring equity and justice to the conversation around the environment, not leaving it to others to think they define that at our expense and or without consulting the lived experience that we bring to bear. After all, we do expand the parameters of democracy, generally speaking, but that also can be applied to matters of the environment. And I think it's our responsibility as public servants to make sure that others recognize that we have a stake in this. As one who has served on the city council, one who has served on the board of supervisors, one who has served on the state assembly and state senate, I've seen it at a variety of levels, what our advocacy can and should be, how we have to lift, how we have to push, how we can make it happen. So I'm delighted to be engaged in this conversation with you. And we'll add more to that when permitted the opportunity to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Ridley Thomas, for reminding us the power that exists inside of the civic process and how we can utilize that. So we look forward to unpacking that with you. And now, last but definitely not least, is our brother Dudley Edmondson, author of The Black and Brown Faces in America's Wild Places, who's been doing this work for decades, but looks like he's still in his early 20s. We'll turn it over to you, brother.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. Yeah, I mean, I've been an outdoor person my entire adult life. My folks weren't outdoor people, but they did take us to, get to escape the heat of the city. We'd go to a little reservoir north of Columbus, Ohio, where I'm originally from. And that's kind of where I found my love of nature, in those green spaces around Hoover Reservoir. And it's been, the restorative powers of having a relationship with nature are things that I think African Americans, we don't get a chance to think about much, if at all. And once I realized how much nature could affect your psychological situation and just, make you feel better, happier, everything, I felt like I needed to spread that to as many African Americans as I possibly could. And then in my career as a nature photographer, I spent a decade or more doing that, still doing it. But as I was traveling around the country, photographing books on birds and mammals and plants and things, and learning all about nature and at all levels, I found there weren't many African Americans out there. And again, I doubled down on my passion to make a connection between Black folks and nature, because I know how I felt standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon, or watching shorebirds in California, coastal California, and things like that. Backpacking. I've done, mountaineering expeditions and all kinds of stuff. And just the way you feel in the outdoors, it's not something you can just describe and tell somebody. It's like, you need this. It's like, no, you actually need to experience it. Then you understand why it's important, why it makes you feel better. Me telling you that doesn't work. You need to experience it. And so I don't have any programs or not part of any nonprofits or anything like that. My way of getting Black folks in the outdoors has been one-on-one. I work with individuals in communities. I mean, I have done programs through Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, have taken, sent me to communities around the country. I've worked with kids in, Indiana and Pennsylvania and Portland, Oregon, and, schools, and I've done all of those things. But when I'm not doing that, I'm still trying to get Black folks in my community to understand the power of nature and how it can help their mental state. And so I do that one-on-one, just working with people. And I've turned 2 young Black men in my community into bird watchers in the last 2 years, just having those one-on-one relationships. So I'm proud and honored to be part of this panel.
All right, well, we appreciate you and thank you for all the work that you're continuing to do. So let's begin with the questions. I'll kick it off and then I will turn it over to my esteemed co-moderator. So our first question is, our roundtable series concluded that we need actions at all levels: national, regional, state, county, and local. What are some of the innovative thoughts at one of the more of these levels so that we can get concrete actions that organizations, legislators, and agencies, and that includes the states and the locals, can move forward on? So I want to take that first question over to our brother, Will Preston Cole.
Thank you for that. I'm excited to say that, we have a lot of challenges relative to getting people of color into the outdoors, but we see that as an opportunity. Again, with 2,200 full-time employees and another 900 or so seasonal employees. Of that group, we have less than 100 professional staff members that are people of color, all classes. That is a travesty. Less than 100 people of color in my organization. And so we know that we have work to do. And what are we going to do? We're going to go on offense. We know that our historical Black colleges and universities provide a wonderful recruiting ground for all of us. I know I spent time at Southern University, I spent time at Alabama A&M, and we now need to reach deep into those organizations that have been on the landscape since the late 1800s. These are all land-grant universities that have agricultural programs, natural resource programs, outdoor recreational programs, and the like. And so I want to tell their story in the state of Wisconsin and continue to recruit. And I'm glad to say, having been the city forester in Milwaukee, thank you, Beatra, we have hired kids from Southern University. And they are as talented as anybody on the landscape. That program at Southern University continues to put out people of color. And the U.S. Forest Service did something that no other federal agency has done. They provided those students with tuition and living expenses. How else are you going to get folks into this work? So we'll be making that trip to see you, Beatra, my new state forester, and I. We will be signing up. And if you need us to do any professional teaching down there, we're doing that. So we're going to lean in heavily on our historical Black colleges and universities. And the rational reason is, how can I send professionals into Milwaukee, Kenosha, Madison, Racine, into the African American and Hispanic communities, and people don't look like them. They want to know who you are. If you come into this church or to this place and you want us to come work for you, who are you? We don't know you. And so we are doing a requisite work of building communities one at a time of people of color, whether they be individuals in social work, outdoor recreation activities. And as I mentioned to you earlier, the groups that I've mentioned, like Outdoor Afro, we have to create a relationship. We have to support them. What can we do for you? And certainly, Black People Camp 2, well, we have 50 campsites that are all big campsites. And here's what we found out. There are a number of people who are willing to have charters into the state of Wisconsin because of the resources that we have. When you want to talk about money and the opportunities around making money, you put folks on the bus. You know how easy it is to get on a bus to go to Minnesota, to go to the gambling, to the casino, and vice versa. Well, we want to use that same technology to drop people off in the North Woods to see a 2-day tour of some of the most beautiful waterfalls in the state of Wisconsin. We want them to see a sunrise over Lake Michigan like they've never seen before. We want them to recreate in the North Woods and be able to take part of that fishing heritage that make people come to the state of Wisconsin to fish for walleye. We are number 3 in the country for out-of-state fishing license. That tells you about people are making their way here. We just need to spread our wings, spread our relationships around the country, specifically around the upper Midwest, and let's get people here. And so those are a couple of ideas of going on offense, calling companies to bring people here. We'll provide the experience. You charge whatever you want to charge. Bring them here. And then again, professionally, getting people of color in our workforce so that they can be able to go into communities of color and talk about what we do and as a wonderful place to work. Because here's what the larger society is worried about in terms of outdoor recreation, natural resources. You know what? If Black folks, brown folks don't get into the outdoors, how relevant will the outdoors be for generations of people who never made their way out there? So, you know, organizations like NWF understand that. You can go to the website for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. On their front page, they're telling stories about, a story about the Black Conservation Corps that had a hand in building every wildlife refuge in this country. If you can see it, you can be it. So my hat's off to NWF and Fish and Wildlife Services because they get it, they understand. We just have to replicate what they do. Thank you.
All right, that was powerful. Brother Mark Ridley Thomas, we're interested in some of your innovative thoughts as well.
Well, thanks very much for that, for the Preston. And let me lean in just a little bit here. I'm a product of South Los Angeles, the epicenter of largely African-American life in Los Angeles. If you extend that to the county of Los Angeles, there are approximately 800,000 African-Americans who live in this space. And to the extent that that is the case, you'll know that that's one of the largest population centers of African-Americans anywhere in the nation. So there's a fair amount going on, but I believe that we need to inspire indigenous leadership. I think Brother Dudley and Brother Preston both have alluded to that. Nearly 30 years ago, I launched an entity called the Empowerment Congress, which is neighborhood leaders who simply want to learn how they make government more responsive to the lived experience of those everyday ordinary citizens, and to demystify government, to make all of the resources of government that would ordinarily be hidden from them, more transparent. So we've been at it for a while. So we worked through one of our committees on equitable economic, environmental, and community development, getting at what it can be or for communities of color in the open spaces, grassroots advocacy connected with elected officials, in this case myself, to identify that open space improvement make the most sense for communities that have often not benefited from them. Now in South Los Angeles, it's often described as a space with a shortage of park space, language that says something to the effect of park poor. I hate to deficit model because I want people to elevate, to aspire, and not think of themselves in diminished terms. So I point to the Kenneth Hahn State Park, 400 plus acres with sweeping vistas, hiking, and lots of recreational amenities right in the space that's important to us. It's adjacent to the largest concentration of African-American wealth in the nation. And it's accessible to the region as a whole. Well, what we've done is taken the Baldwin Hills community, which is the eastern portion, taking it all the way out to the Pacific Ocean, in a little project called Park to Playa, namely a 13.5 mile that connects the park in Baldwin Hills to that ocean with hiking, with bike paths, with a range of opportunities that open up what it means to be outdoors in the urban environment. We just completed that. It's the first of its kind in the urban space in LA County. Many argue west of the Mississippi, you find no such examples of this level of innovation and the like. We're proud of it. And we built a bridge connecting the park to the other side of La Cienega Boulevard, those of you who are familiar with Los Angeles, and where there were oil fields and so forth. We are, the county is purchasing them one by one and replacing them. So we placed in it what's called the Stone View Nature Center. I took my grandson to see the Bee Hotel just this past weekend at the Nature Center. Duke is 4 years old and he had himself a blast. And he said, "Where's the honey at? Granddad," I said, "you're too young to be asking questions like that. Don't worry about it. We're going to the store to get the honey. They'll leave that alone." And so here we are, trying to humanize the environment and elevate our opportunities in the context of innovation that I know can and will make a difference. And so we just keep pressing, we keep pounding. I can cite the Magic Johnson Park that we just dedicated with the highest levels of technologies and aquifers and the like to make that water resilient system all that it can be. 105 acres right in the middle of the Watts Willowbrook community with a brand new multi-purpose facility so the community can gather, with wedding pavilions, with all kinds of, this is what we mean when we talk about the open space and the 21st century, to invite people from what we often refer to as the urban context. There was an equestrian center on the map in phase 2 in the Magic Johnson Park because for those of you who had a chance to watch Concrete Cowboys just the other day on Netflix, you'll know that interfacing with animals and so forth is a part of what we mean when we talk about nature and the environment. And so LA has a lot going on. I take no credit for being the author and the finisher of all of it, but I've made my contribution. The things to which I referred, I've been integral to, and there's a lot more than that to report on, but I'll pause right there because I'm sure others have contributions that they can make that are equally important and or interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. You remind us, as we do in the environmental justice movement, that our environment is where we live, work, play, pray, and go to school.
That's right. That's right.
Such as everything.
Right.
All right. Anyone else want to join in on this particular question?
I want to make a quick plug on legal education and people of color, looking at how do we make sure that we see legal professionals of color who are working to conserve the environment and natural resources, and talk about the LDF program, the Marshall Motley Scholars. As we look at what it costs for people to go to law school and we compare that to other professional schools are providing scholarships and making it actually more likely that people can take a path to that profession. Whereas the legal profession and law schools themselves are actually really flailing when it comes to students of color and making legal education affordable. So as people are thinking about where dollars can go to support having more people of color practicing in conservation and natural resources law, thinking about really, aggressively funding legal education scholarships, the Marshall Motley Scholars Program, their investment, I think over the course of 5 years for 50 future civil rights attorneys, I think it's $40 million. Like it is a sizable investment that will allow these people, people who are interested in practicing civil rights law to actually go to law school, to have, their housing paid for. It's providing a fellowship after school, and it's requiring actually practicing in that field for 8 years. But it is allowing a path to that career by actually providing funding to support it. So I just wanted to put that in there as people are thinking about, like, what are the concrete things that can happen that make sure that there's representation, and the legal field is making sure that legal education is actually affordable.
We appreciate
it. And Mustafa, if you don't mind, I'd like to add that there's an opportunity in this space, because Preston Cole said it so eloquently about reaching out to HBCUs, but I am a product of when it works. I come out of rural Louisiana. I am a proud daughter of an HBCU. I'm first generation college. I was plucked out of rural Louisiana by a summer ag and conservation camp that exposed me to natural resources and conservation and agriculture. I was offered a scholarship to go to this same HBCU, Southern University, the nation's only urban forestry degree program. Scholarship, internships every summer that included payment and living assistance, so I could enjoy and my parents could afford for me to go and be exposed. And then I was offered a job because I kept my grades up while I was in school. And 20 years later, I lead the same program that found me in rural Louisiana. I'm the nation's leader. And so the system can work when we have people who want it to work, agencies who want it to work. And we also have representation inside the agencies who can see a path forward. And so I have to insert that point, because in the question we ask for action. This is an innovation. This system, these authorities, these programs, this funding has been in place, but we have to have people and the representation pushing for progress, but also accountability.
It is.
That's great. Hey, Brother Mustafa, just a word, if I may. I think I should put this in. I can't quite say it was 20 years later in my case. Beatrice is more like 40 and some change, but that's just what it is. I'm glad just to be here. The point that I want to make is I sit next to what is called right here and right now the Natural History Museum. It's the oldest natural history museum structure in the city of Los Angeles, in the county of Los Angeles. It has approximately some 35 scientists, largely PhDs, entomologists, and the like. And it's in a space that's surrounded by African American and Latino communities that can take part to it. Immediately, no more than 100 yards to my left is a butterfly pavilion that flips at the seasonal point to a spider pavilion. And that's the point in time where I flee, as you might well understand. And all of that's right here. Now, it's interesting that this park, known as Exposition Park, some of you have probably come to the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. That's where the Exposition Park structure is all around that. It's known technically from a state designation vantage point as the 6th agricultural district. This was originally all of that, and it has evolved into a rather fabulous thing. The California Science Center sits here. The California African American Museum sits here. All of that is then integrated into what we are trying to express in terms of the outdoors, the environment, arts, culture. The intersectionality of all of that is huge. It is rich, and we have to be up in it real time. And so on the board of the Natural History Museum, which is a fabulous experience, that we need to make sure that African-American leadership is there, contributing, doing what they need to do from a philanthropic perspective so that they can leverage their assets for generations to come, those generations that look like those contributors, those donors, those philanthropists. So this is a variety of levels of engagement that I think is very important. But it occurs to me that as we speak, there are citizen scientists running around with little microphones. When someone says, I think, Dudley, you said you've caused a couple of young brothers to be bird watchers, right? I looked up one day and they had this high-powered tech microphone in my hand listening to hummingbirds trying to find them in these trees all around here. So it's a fabulous, wonderful experience, and kids get turned on and they then pursue careers that are meaningful to them in terms of their higher education opportunities and aspirations. So we can unlock a lot of things by just being open-minded to the tremendous opportunities that exist out there for young people and communities, but we have to do it through a lens of equity so that there is an equitable distribution of those assets and those resources that improve the quality of life of those who are African American and others.
Good. I think we're going to move on to question 2 now.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, if that's okay, I might move us to question 3, and if we can come back, or if you can integrate question 2 about what's going on legislatively and congressionally into this question too. But I have to say, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about what's going on in Minneapolis right now, having spent part of my career in conservation in Minnesota with the trial that's going on right now and the killing of a young man there. That are we at the point where we need to look at reforming our own conservation officers and park rangers and guides? I, being the first African American to lead a 13 Northeastern region, had a chance to drive to various facilities on my way to the job in the Northeast. And many of the first people I saw, they were rangers and they were conservation officers. And I didn't feel very welcome. And there were some specific things that happened. They didn't know who I was. So it was like that undercover boss thing. But I was told that I didn't belong there. I was told that I must be lost, that I should have been some other place, that they didn't offer the bathroom used for just people in the public. And so, you know, I just want to throw that out there because we can talk about the great things that are going on. But what do we need to do in terms of looking at evaluating our conservation officers, conservation career path, park rangers, Forest Service folks? And I'm going to throw that one at, I'll throw it at Dudley, and because we haven't heard from him for a while, and then we'll open it up for the rest of the panelists to speak to it.
Yeah, I want to just quickly go back to one about representation and issues there, just a teeny bit, just to say that one thing I have seen that is part of that problem is the communities in which people are going to work. I think that if you're going to bring brown people in, and this kind of relates to your story with this question, really, pretty much, and you need to make sure that community is accepting of that brown young employee of Fish and Wildlife, Park Service, whatever. I've worked with a couple of universities who were trying to get young people of color to take conservation careers, and that was a problem. There was like, they wanted them working in these remote communities, predominantly white communities. And it's like, so if you're going to take a responsibility of bringing this person in, you better make sure to be part of their safety network, their backup, someone they can call. I even offered myself in 2 different cases of colleges in the area. I told them, if these young Black men or women have issues, call me. I will drive over there and I will help them, or I will address this issue. But the thing is, when things go down, brown folks need brown folks around, right? And so if you're in a community that's predominantly white and some things don't go right, you know, who do you call? You know, who's got your back? And so I was telling them, I said, you need to sort of canvass the community and talk to people and sort of make some kind of safety networks for these brown folks working in these predominantly white communities, where they have people they can go to or call and come to their aid. I was talking to a young man at Stevens Point in Wisconsin, and he was had his biology degree, degree, and he said he couldn't wait to get out of that town because the white folks treated him so bad. He did not want to work in that community. He did not want to work in that community. He wanted to get out of there. So I don't know if that is part of the answer to your question, but I just want to make sure that we talk about that you need to make sure that brown folks have safety networks if you want them in conservation careers in predominantly white community. That's your responsibility as an employee of that agency to make sure that those young people are safe.
Yeah, so mentoring and networking is so important in that, and especially for those of us that did come from historical Black colleges and universities. That's the community we were accustomed to being in, and so it'd be great if we could. Beatra, you want to talk about the subject of rangers and you know, conservation officers, anything you'd like to talk about? This is your last opportunity. Or if you want to talk about congressional legislative, the Biden administration's, you know, priorities, this is your last opportunity. So whichever those you'd like to choose.
So thank you, Dr. Parker. One thing I would say, I'll touch on the Biden administration and the moment we're in right now. And a few years ago, a sister came out with a book called The Year of Yes. It was by Shonda Rhimes. I mean, just amazing talent she is. But I see right now as a tailwind of opportunity as a Black woman in natural resources and conservation, knowing that I'm a national lead of a program and roughly $40 million for urban and community forests, but just thinking about in what I've seen evolve as an agency. So I have to say that this is a tailwind, whether it's environmental justice, climate adaptation, racial equity. You know, in urban communities, trees are the answer for so many of these different concerns and challenges. And so it's exciting. And then also to know that I sit in this platform where I am never shy to lift the voice and think about who's missing, what's missing, and where we're missing an opportunity to engage and better connect. Because it's not that every young person will have an opportunity to arrive on the nation's forests and grasslands. We have to go get them. So whether it's infrastructure and providing and thinking about how transportation gets these young people back and forth, or thinking about the green space right there on their block or in their community, there's so many different ways we can show up. And so it's not, many of the authorities we have to do the work we do as public servants are in place, but we have some executive orders that are sincere tailwinds to allowing us to do these without the roadblocks and speed bumps. And I know Mustafa knows exactly what I'm talking about through his career service in environmental justice. We now have a chance to stand with confidence in this space. And so thank you for that question. But I do want to say, with regard to representation in our conservation workforce, I've never been a district ranger. That's what we are in Forest Service. I've never been a forest supervisor. I've always been in urban and community forestry, but I have interned and I have gone to those spaces. And I will tell you that I'm a firm believer in the buddy system, because as I don't know conservation workforce through a textbook, I know it through testimonial. And I know how we feel, how we've been treated, how my classmates who no longer are in conservation, who are no longer in forestry, I know. And so what I do is use this moment in the space I have to make sure that I'm saying things like, not one Black female will go to this place, but two, no less than two. Because if something goes down, we need a witness. And it's changing the narrative, because if they are individually in a space where they don't feel safe, and then they come back, and then the narrative changes that the young person perhaps might have been lazy or uninterested in doing the work, or uninterested in exploring and doing the conservation work. We want to make sure that we've set these young people up for success. Another thing is, we think about the workforce and it's the exposure. Our young people don't know what they don't know, but when they are exposed, when they are engaged, I am not surprised how many of them connect immediately and want to be. So recruitment is not the problem. Retention is where the skin in the game and the sleeves need to be rolled up. And for those of us like myself who have in 20 years evolved and had an opportunity to duck, dodge, and get up, promotion is the expectation. Because once you have decision-making power, budget authority, and approval authority, hiring authority, that's where things look different. So when the question comes, I want to talk to your boss, or who's in charge, and then my camera comes on, it looks so much different than perhaps what it might have been before. And I know Preston Cole knows what I'm talking about. And so it's the friends like Preston, and it's comments in the chat from Christian and folks who want to reach out to our young people at these HBCUs, and to know that they're not just at HBCUs, they're at Job Corps centers, they're at conservation centers, but we have to know that they all deserve dignity, respect, and belonging when they get in these spaces. So regardless of the training program and regardless of the title, the expectation is still there, that they will feel like they belong and they should be there.
Great. Anybody else want to chime in on this subject?
So I'd like to chime in on the issue of the current Environmental Justice Executive Order 14008 and the Justice 40 Initiative, opportunities that people might be looking for to raise up issues of representation of Black people in the environment, in green spaces. The Justice 40 Initiative is part of Biden's Executive Order 14008. So looking toward 40% of federal investments going toward energy, clean energy, energy efficiency, training and workforce development, contaminated site remediation, making sure that those investments go to overburdened communities. So I think that there's an opportunity. So April 28th and May 13th, there are opportunities for public comment to raise these issues about representation in green spaces and the need to continually push funding in that direction. Also to look at not investing in projects that are ones that are really damaging to the environment and natural resources. I mean, I'm not going to get into a lot of details about that, but that's the work that I do to say, if we're going to talk about investing in clean energy and we're going to talk about investing in making sure we have beautiful spaces, then we need to change where our energy, we need to change what type of energy we're using. So I think that's something that we should be looking to. The McKeach and Grijalva bill, if anybody is interested in getting behind that and looking at, those opportunities to provide funding for parks. That's often, the first place that people are able to interact with their environment is their local parks and spaces. And that legislation has particular provisions about grants for parks in urban communities, like, the parks that we're used to going down the street to when we're, just in our neighborhood. So I just want to make sure to not pass by the opportunity, like what's happening right now and where we can get involved in those spaces.
Great, good. Okay, did I see one more hand? Because we'll have to wrap up in a minute, but did I see you, Preston, on any last comments or questions on this panel?
Yeah, on this notion of safety in the outdoors, it's a real thing, without question. And so we pay very close attention to that about who we hire. So we're going on offense, and what I would consider doing something non-traditional. When big cities, towns, and villages in Wisconsin hire for their police officers, they may have 200 to 300 people on that list and they only hire 40. And what we're able to do is get that list and mail individuals a application or send them information about law enforcement with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And in doing so, these folks would literally sit on that civil service list for a long time. But we know when we go to Milwaukee or Madison, La Crosse, Racine, Kenosha, where there are a lot of people of color on that list, our hopes is that we're able then to recruit into our workforce because it's the same minimum requirements, 18 years old, in 5 years get 60 credits, and so on and so forth. So we lean in heavily, and we have a large Hmong population from southeastern. And so we know that we have to have representatives. So our recruiter is, again, from Southeast Asia and from the Hmong community. So we can replicate hiring folks where folks have moved here and set up camp for the last 75 years, that they too can see themselves in law enforcement. But to what was said before, safety in the outdoors is a real deal for people of color.
Thank you. Mustafa, I'll turn it back over to you for the closeout.
Yeah, so we're going to have our call to action now. We have two amazing folks to bring us home. Let's go to Bill Houston, Board Chair of the National Wildlife Federation.
Thank you, Mustafa. I first want to say how humbled and honored I am to share this space with you all this evening. Those of you who really have been doing this work and sharing such an undue and unjust burden for so long. I greatly appreciate it. I greatly appreciate your patience with me as a learner and your willingness to share your experiences and often painful stories so that all of us may better understand. I want to thank my fellow board members, Mamie Parker, John Robbins, Miguel Ordonada. They have put in hours and hours of planning to make this evening and the 3 other roundtables happen as volunteers. Really shows the dedication to this work, and I greatly appreciate it. I want to thank the staff, Mustafa, Simone, Julia, Rebecca, for the hours that they've put into this. I especially want to thank Colin Amara, really for leading us in recognizing together how critical this work is. Our mission is to unite all Americans, and never has it been more clear to me that that word all is key, right? That wildlife and the health of us as Americans really depends on us coming together, working together to make the outdoors a safe space for everyone. I've been a registered Maine guide and an outdoor educator for over 30 years. And I've seen firsthand over and over again the power of wild places, of wildlife as transformational spaces. For me, the wilderness has always been a place of sanctuary, a place of solace, and to really realize that for so many, that's not the case. And knowing how powerful a healing agent wildlife and wilderness can be to everyone, I am dedicated to make the outdoors, wildlife, nature available to everyone. And I appreciate so much that Colin and all of us really, I think at this point at the National Wildlife Federation, realize that we have a lot of work to do, but we are deeply committed to this work. And I really look forward to authentic partnerships with all of you to move this work forward, to get more and more of our young people into nature, and to hear positive stories in the future of their experiences with wildlife. So I'm have the great pleasure to introduce our last speaker. You all know him as the Central Park birder, which is such a limiting phrase for who he really is. What I didn't recognize is that he's had an ongoing relationship with the National Wildlife Federation since he was 10 years old, working with our Garden for Wildlife program to design a wildlife garden on his rooftop in Manhattan. So he's been an advocate since he was a kid. He is indeed, he denies this to me, but he is a hardcore birder, having just flown on an airplane to go to Ecuador to see a Harpy's eagle. I'm certainly jealous of that, but that's what I call dedication. And that really shows us all, you know, that he recognizes, he knows that power of an experience with an animal and what that can do for all of us, and that he's willing to seek that out. What I most appreciate about Kristen Cooper is that he is the superhero that he writes about for DC and Marvel Comics. It's not just the incident in Central Park, which is obviously unfortunate, but his willingness to take that incident and to embrace it and to share it with all of us and help us recognize what so many Black people face and BIPOC people face in the United States. And the courage of a superhero to take that forward, to embrace that experience, to share it with all of us, and to carry the burden that he knew he would bear by bringing it forward and bringing it public and maintaining it in the public eye. So Kristen, thank you deeply. And I want to turn it over to Kristen Cooper and Dr. Mamie Parker to close us out with a call for action. Thank you.
Ooh, wow, Kristen, what an introduction, right? You want to
really?
We need to take him on the road with us. But what about this awesome panel, Kristen? What a day,
Okay,
right?
so before anything else is said, I have to say I am humbled to be here amongst all of you, because you have been doing the work for years. You know, a twist of fate threw me into the spotlight on the same day, ironically, tragically, that George Floyd was murdered. And it made what happened to me resonate, I think, even more with a lot of people who thought, does this really happen in the United States today? Yeah, guess what? It really does happen in the United States today. So I know, Bill, you said it was unfortunate. I'm gonna say it was not unfortunate, because what it did was it made a lot of white people, non-Black people, aware of what really does go on for so many of us that maybe they were not aware of before. So in that way, I can't call it unfortunate what happened to me. But as I was saying, I am in awe of all of you. You have been doing the work. The work I've been doing has been going into the schools and trying to bring up a new generation, teaching Black and brown kids in the public schools in New York City, getting them outside and exposing them to birds. We all have our piece of this to do, but I am in awe of all of you, and thank you, thank you, thank you, and please keep doing what you're doing. So that's the first thing that has to be said.
Great, great. So in many of our eyes, your name is awesome. And we just really, really want to say thank you for the courage that you've had to speak on behalf of a number of people that have had the experience in some way or another that you've had. And so we're just grateful to have you here and talk a little bit about that courage. And then I have one question that came from our audience that I'd like to ask. So talk about, where did that inspiration and that courage come from, Christian? Because it's certainly there.
It's a family trait. My mom and dad were civil rights activists, and they made it very clear. It was never spoken in words. It was just how we were brought up, that, you know, if you see something wrong in the world, it is your job to do something. It is your personal job to do something to fix it. And so, you know, when this happened, this presented me with an opportunity to do something to try to move things along, to fix things. That's not something you shirk. That is something you have to take on. So that was part of it. And part of it in that moment was memories of Philando Castile. You know, we keep coming back to Minnesota. Unfortunately, it is not the only state with race problems, but in Minnesota, there was a gentleman named Philando Castile who got pulled aside in a random traffic stop. And, you know, he did everything you were supposed to do, everything Black mothers tell their Black sons you're supposed to do. Keep your hands on the wheel, be respectful to the police officer. He volunteered to the police officer who pulled him over. A white police officer. Philando Castile is Black, in case that's unclear. And he volunteered, oh, I have a handgun in the car. It is registered. I have a license and a permit to carry. I just want you to be aware of that. He still ended up shot dead by that police officer as his girlfriend sat next to him and watched it and put it on Facebook Live. And while the little child in the back seat watched all of this happen. And when that happened, I said to myself, they're going to shoot us no matter what we do. And if that's the case, I'm going to go out with my dignity intact. I am not going to compromise. I am not going to participate in my own dehumanization. I am going to be a full human being in this situation. And I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, which was recording this particular woman on video, you know, regardless of whether I'm Black, brown, green, yellow, whatever. And despite her attempts to racially intimidate me. And that's what I did. So that's where that came from.
So the question, and I won't paraphrase it, but I can't, it's a long question, but it says, so now are you people of color demanding state and national land strictly for your own use? Is my safety in danger if I enter your parks? Which this whole discussion is becoming a cause of extreme sadness to me. And she goes on and say that, you know, she's given up on the local parks like Central Park and others because you all are there. And but she feels the national parks and the state parks should not totally be those that we are trying to claim. And so talk a little bit about, you know, Central Park and how it's available to all people.
Sure. Well, yeah, my response to that person would be, the national parks are big. Central Park is big. All these places are big. There is room for all of us to go out there and to enjoy them. So please, you know, don't feel that, you know, you can't go anymore, that we're trying to take something away from you. It's not like this zero-sum game where there's just this much pie and it's got to be sliced up between this many people. There is room for all of us. And I think what you will find, surprisingly, is that as you encounter more people of diverse backgrounds in the parks, you will find that we're all kind of enjoying similar things. The best example to me was when a Kirtland, and I will constantly return to birds because that's my obsession since I was about 10 years old. And I will quickly, well, I'll get back to that later. But there was a Kirtland's warbler that showed up in Central Park. This is like saying a unicorn stepped out of the forest, because there's about 6,000 Kirtland's warblers in the entire world, and they all live in about this much of Michigan. And they winter in the Bahamas, and one of them took a wrong turn and ended up in Central Park in the spring, I don't know how many years ago, 2 or 3, 4, 5 years ago. And we found out about it and we lost our minds. And the thing was, when you were there in that moment, looking at that Kirtland's warbler, Nobody gave a damn whether you were black, blue, green, yellow, or whatever. And the joy was infectious amongst all of us. We were all just sharing the bird, appreciating the bird, loving our bird. And so I would say to this woman who wrote this message, share that joy. Share that joy with other people who you may not otherwise have any connection to, but you will have this connection. And maybe from that connection, you can start to build other connections and other appreciations for each other.
That's great. It's great. And you also, when we talked earlier, we talked about advocacy and how important it is to get everyone supporting, financially supporting and asking for resources for the national and state parks too.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're ready for me to give my closing statement, but that's a good transition to it.
Yes, yes, it is.
So I would like to address now the white people in particular who are watching this, or the non-black and brown people who are watching this, to say that, how to phrase this? This is the right thing to do. Making sure that black and brown people feel safe in the outdoors, in wild spaces, is the right thing to do. And when I say that, I can feel everyone's eyes glaze over. And I understand that. It makes my eyes glaze over, kind of. And it's been a long Zoom. And, long Zooms makes, at this point, we've all been on long Zooms for longer than we could possibly imagine. Makes all our eyes glaze over. So let me put it another way, a different way. Yes, it's the right thing to do. If you want your organization to survive, if more importantly, forget just National Wildlife Federation. If you want the wild to survive, if you want nature to survive, this work is essential. Why do I say that? Because the demographics of the nation are changing. Black and brown people are an increasing proportion of the population. In cities like mine, New York City, it has already happened. The demographics have changed. And it is no longer a white majority city. If you have not done the work to cultivate black and brown people in your constituency, to be part of your organization, to be out in the wild, to appreciate the wilderness and nature and wildlife, then there will be no constituency to support it legislatively, to make sure that it continues. There will be no constituency when you go to your senator and say to your senator, hey, we need to protect our national parks. And your senator will say, well, none of my constituents care about that. None of my voters say anything about that. If you have not cultivated the next generation, the black and brown people who are increasingly a part of the electorate, you will not have people to support wildlife. So it is essential. It is critical to your mission. Put aside whether it's the right thing to do. It is. And that should be enough. But it is essential to achieving the mission of the National Wildlife Federation and all the other conservation organizations, including the one I belong to. So that's why this work is critical. It's funny, I want to go back to something Dudley said when he talked about those two young men in the fishing boat and how they got shot at. And I want to talk about, I was not going to talk about specific things that white people can do, but I'm going to talk about specific things you can do. Let's take that situation where those two young black men in the boat are being shot at. Your job as a white ally is to get that person's license plate. They do not leave without you getting their license plate. Your job is to make sure that Dudley's two friends know that there's a white person who has their back, and that it is not those two men in the boat who are isolated and marginalized and should feel threatened. It is those people driving away in the truck who should know that between the black people and the white people who are their allies, they are marginalized and they are hemmed in and they have no place to go. That is your job as a white person. Other things, specific things you can do, take out your pen because you're gonna wanna write these down, or else open your word processing program. Because I know you had that out all along and you were taking notes through everybody's statements, but you may have put it away thinking there's no more to be said. So take them out now. You're gonna take a couple of notes. We talked about the faith community. If you're an organization that's looking to recruit more black and brown members, one thing to do that you can do is make absolutely sure that not all your bird walks or nature walks are on Sunday mornings. Why? Because for a lot of Black people, Sunday morning is when they're in church, so they won't go. Okay, now I say that as someone who is the rare Black person who is absolutely not church. You put me near a church and I burst into flames, okay? But I know, even I know, that a lot of Black people are in church on Sunday morning. Don't make that all your nature walks because you want to get some Black people there. Another good idea, have some food. People love food. Have some food at your walks. It's a great way to break bread and get people talking and bring them together. Another way to get people out. Most important of all, just take the time to make people feel welcome. And I say this because every time I see a Black person birding in Central Park, I'm all over that. I'm like, hey, who are you? What are you doing? Good to see you. Glad you're here. Somebody did that to me when I was 9 or 10 years old. This Black kid, crazy about birds for some bizarre reason, and I went to a walk for South Shore Audubon Society on Long Island. Only Black kid there. This Jewish guy who ran the walks, Elliot Kuttner, took one look at me, and from that moment on, he made it his business for the subsequent 5, 10, whatever years that he nurtured that love of birds in me and made sure I knew that it was something to hold on to and to be fostered and that I was welcome. And that is your job as white people, is to make sure Black and brown people feel welcome, have their backs. So those are a couple of things you can do specifically to try to move the needle on this. It is hard work. It is not easy. It will take time. The organization I'm involved with, New York City Audubon, we have been trying to move the needle for a while. We've made huge strides in terms of our board composition. For a conservation organization, our board composition is incredibly heavy with minorities, which is great. Our membership is still largely white. We have a lot of work to do. Everybody has work to do. It takes time. It is hard work, and it's challenging, and you're gonna feel exhausted sometimes, but it's joyful. There is joy along the way. There is joy at the end of the tunnel, as I was talking about, and I keep coming back to that Kirtland's warbler because the joy was palpable and everybody felt it. And it was a sense of community amongst all of us, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity. It didn't matter. We were in the wild, we were looking at this spectacular bird and we were loving it and we all felt it. And that's the joy that comes with this work, that's at the end of this work. So soldier on, keep doing it. I hope you were taking notes with what everybody said. If not, replay this and take notes with your pen and your word processor, and let's get down to the work.
Thank you so much. If we were there, you'd get a round of applause, a bigger round of applause. And we look forward to working with you in the future. And I can't wait to take you to my home state of Arkansas so we can look for that Lord God Almighty bird. It's called the what?
It's called the ivory-billed woodpecker. And boy, would we make headlines if we found it. Oh.
So White River National Wildlife Refuge in Arkansas, look out for these two people of color that's headed that way. So Mustafa, I'm gonna let you speak and then I'll close us out.
Well, it's just been a phenomenal series and of course a phenomenal roundtable. And thank you to everyone so much for all that you continue to do. And as we help the country to better focus on our humanity. If we do that, it will change so many different dynamics. And as I often close out, I will just remember folks that you have power unless you give it away. Back to you, Mamie.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all of you all. It's just been my pleasure to serve as the moderator for this panel and the roundtables. And we are here to help any one of you all. We feel indebted to you panelists for being there with us along this journey, and know that you can count on us to be there for you as well. I'd like to also give a shout out again to our partners, Outdoor Afro and Rue Map and her folks there, Patagonia, you've been there with us all along, Black AF in STEM, as well as the Links Incorporated. We thank you all for your support. Of course, the Honorable Barbara Lee, as well as Don McKeechin, Judge Leslie Miller Frazier, and Kristen Cooper, and many of the other panelists. We thank you all for being here, and the staff at NWF. We just celebrate you, we love you, and we appreciate you. And my fellow board members, Chairman Bill Houston, John Robbins, Miguel Ordonada, as well as others. Thank you all for your time and your attention. We appreciate you all being here. And as you've heard, you have that call to action. So go out and do great things. Let us read about you all later. And have a good evening. Thanks a lot. Good night, everybody.